So Tom, what are your favorite ponies? I get asked this question a lot in some form or another, and nearly all of the time my first reaction is always, how do you guys still not know? But in all honesty, the question itself is a perfect excuse to take a stab at something I've been tempted to do for a while. Since this fandom seems obsessed with lists and ranking things, I figured I'd throw my hat into the fray. So here we go. This is my top 5 favorite ponies. Wait, hold the phone for a sec. What is that? No, seriously, explain that! Okay, well, I think it's fair to say that most everyone knows that my favorite pony is far and away Rarity. I've made that fact pretty clear at this point. In addition to that, I harbor a lot of love for Trixie and Scootaloo since I've done so many projects cemented around them. So, having them included on this list fills up nearly all the slots available and leaves no room for surprise. So this list is not going to include those characters since they're essentially a given. In addition, my choices here aren't going to just be limited to canon work. While I'll only be listing canon characters, this list will reflect fan interpretation of those characters in terms of my personal rankings. It is my list, after all. So, with that out of the way, I present to you my top 5 favorite ponies, besides the obvious, as determined by all the MLP media I've consumed. See why I just went with the asterisk? Number 5. Pipsqueak. An interesting choice to be sure, as Pip doesn't really have much to do in FIM proper, but I'll be damned if he wasn't utterly adorable in his one true outing in the beginning of Season 2. I loved his design, loved his personality, loved his terribly inaccurate accent, and I loved his role of being able to show some much needed affection towards Luna. He was just a cute, innocent, lovable character. So, imagine my surprise when I fell in love with him even harder from his interpretation in Chuck Finley's Pipsqueak's Day Off, which ages him and the rest of Ponyville 7 years and takes innocent little Pip and transforms him into a snarky, hedonistic womanizer, though he isn't averse to batting for the other team as well, and whose speech is absolutely littered with British slang. Finley takes Pip and transforms him from a cute little kid to a delinquent adolescent, and somehow it totally works, and I absolutely love it. His banter with Featherweight, Chowder, Dinky, Spike, and the CMC is just fantastic, as is their group dynamic. And he paints Pipsqueak as that asinine troublemaker that you just can't help but love anyways. Number 4. Twilight Sparkle. Here's a choice that makes a bit more logical sense. Twilight is one of the members of the main cast I find myself relating to a fair amount. Introverted by nature, but able to escape her shell a bit when around a small group of close friends. She's socially awkward, hesitant to try new things without intense amounts of research, constantly trying to learn more, and holds herself to unhealthily high standards. The fact that she's the main character and acts as an audience stand-in for other characters to deliver exposition and world building also helps establish her relationship with the viewer, in addition to the obvious extra boost in screen time compared to the other characters. There's just simply more of Twilight to love than any other character, especially if you like the adventure arcs, as she's nearly always the central focus of them. Add in her capabilities as a leader and her magical prowess, and canon Twilight alone would make for a fantastic character. Fanon Twilight gets even more awesome though, as many writers take her, capitalize on her arcane abilities, and weave stories around her penchant to take to spellcasting, often advancing her a few years and making her an incredibly competent mage. Being someone who has always been intrigued by this archetype, fandom Twilight often goes into territories I thoroughly enjoy. Archmage by Loyal to One is a great example of this. But the best Twilight is one that can address her magical abilities more directly than the show allows, while still retaining her innate humanity and flaws. As Twilight's powers grow, so does her sense of responsibility and penchant to overthink things, and oftentimes she gets herself into trouble as she shoulders the problems that comes with the abilities she inherits alone. As someone with as much arcane aptitude as Twilight can easily become deluded into thinking that magic alone can solve all their problems. The Wind Beneath Her Wings by Taw and Flying High, Falling Hard by Sounds Like Ponies are both fics that use Twilight in this regard. Overall, I think Twilight excels in her flexibility, as she is a very fleshed out character that can be interpreted in a number of different fanon variations, but her canon persona is strong enough to not only stand on its own, but it ties together all those fanon incarnations in a familiar, logical fashion that all still feel like Twilight. Number 3. Pinkie Pie. Adolescence and adulthood have not been kind to me, crushing my once naive optimism under the heel of a depressingly restrictive and, at least to me, utterly illogical social structure and ethical proceedings, leaving behind a maladjusted 20-something with a penchant for snark and cynicism. So leave it to Pinkie Pie to remind me just how fun being happy can be.
Did somebody say fun? Where?
Yeah, that sounds lame, but I can't help but really taking a liking to Pinkie simply because of how upbeat she always is. She's silly, goofy, illogical, irrational, and utterly committed to having fun. She's very much the representation of the best childhood has to offer. A character who may be grown up physically, but mentally never lost that spark that all young children seem to have, that peppy energy and an unquenchable zest for play. Something about MLP being so upbeat in the face of an overly cynical reality is what made ponies appeal to me in the first place, and Pinkie is just an even stronger magnification of this concept. Even in the universe she occupies, she represents boundless optimism. So to someone like myself receptive to the overarching platitudes this show is projecting, Pinkie's characterizations and antics are quite enticing. Makes me wish I knew more people like her in real life. Of course, Pinkie isn't perfect, and her reliance on her friends' mental states in order to keep her own projection of self justified can sometimes work against her, but that just reinforces how dedicated to her cause Pinkie Pie is. I know I said before that this aspect of Pinkie painted her as hyper-altruistic, but a lot of people also pointed out that Pinkie is also simultaneously rather ethically hedonist in her actions as well, leave it to a character that breaks the fourth wall to simultaneously occupy two diametrically opposed mental states. Or, you know, just chalk it up to multiple writers. Number 2. Rainbow Dash. I know, Rainbow Dash, what a cliched answer, but I'm sorry. Dash might be the one who gets the most blatant fanfare from some of the louder members of the fandom, but I'd be lying if I said Rainbow didn't deserve at least some of the credit. Her characters become incredibly complex and layered, especially post-season 3. Rainbow was actually initially my favorite pony overall when I first got into the show, as I think she is for a lot of people, especially if you're hesitant to admit to yourself that you like MLP. Dash is a bit of a tomboy and embodies a lot of the characteristics that are prevalent in boys' entertainment, making her a safe, comfortable character to latch onto when first diving into the show. In addition, unlike a character like Rarity, which takes some time to build up and develop, Rainbow Dash wears her personality on her sleeve, and her best characteristics are instantly recognizable, with basically the entire gamut of her persona on display right in her intro scene in the first episode. And of course, that personality, while a bit abrasive, is also quite endearing. Rainbow exudes confidence and boldness to the point of being reckless, and can often transgress into the realm of arrogance. But as someone who is comparatively timid in my real-world actions, I can't help but admire this kind of archetype as something I'd like to aspire to become. Rainbow's character expanded immensely as the show progressed though, and now I love Dash for a lot of the same reasons I love Rarity, believe it or not. Just like Rarity, Dash is governed by a singular goal. She wants to be a Wonderbolt. Just like Rarity has a passion for aesthetics, Rainbow has a passion for flight, and they both excel in their pursuits. Dash is shown in Sonic Rainboom, however, not to have an unlimited amount of courage or bravado, and can crack under pressure, in addition to apparently be carrying a lot of baggage from her youth. Her character expands even further, and most triumphantly, back-to-back in Sleepless in Ponyville and Wonderbolt Academy. In both episodes, Dash's blunt exterior melts away a bit, and we're shown how the previous two seasons have tempered her bravado a bit, admitting to Scootaloo that she used to be afraid of ghost stories, then finally taking her under her wing, and then in Wonderbolt Academy, being willing to throw away the dream that her entire character is revolved around for the sake of her friends and her personal sense of ethics. When her dream was revealed to not hold up to what she was expecting it to be, Dash was willing to take the moral high ground and walk away from it. As someone who is governed largely by their moral compass, characters that stick to their guns in situations like that get lots of points in my book. And finally, number 1. Ditzy Do. Bet you didn't see that one coming, eh? So, my love for Ditzy comes pretty much entirely from the fandom, as there really isn't much to her in terms of the show, aside from little bits here and there and her infamous scene in the last roundup, all of which I utterly loved. The thing about Ditzy Do is that she stands for something really powerful on a macro level, at least to me. Ditzy is clumsy. She is awkward. She messes up all the time. She just doesn't have her shit together. But she never lets that get her down, and she never gives up. It's those perceptions of her that I really resonate with, not so much when she's played as an actual airheaded ditz, but when other ponies perceive her as such due to her eyes and clumsiness. But there is a competent, intelligent mare there that understands she's a little bit different, but works even harder to overcome those challenges with a smile on her face, and never lets those obstacles get the better of her or look down on others for perceiving her that way. Ditzy is all over the fandom, and there are countless images, comics, and fics that portray her in this way. The first fic I ever read, Shipping and Handling by my buddy Pegasus Rescue Brigade, is a great example of Ditzy. This story is also an example of the fandom portraying Ditzy as a single mom, which, while I'm not normally one for being interested in characters that are parents, the added struggle of raising a child just does so much to increase the resonance of the archetype that Ditzy portrays, and it gives her a reason to continue to be so optimistic and continue struggling on despite her difficulties, because she has a child and Dinky to come home to and remind her what she's fighting for. But in no way has Ditzy ever been better portrayed than in my new favorite fic of all time, Life and Times of a Winning Pony by Chengar Kodath. The Ditzy in this fic is just the most pure, loving, caring character I've stumbled across in fiction in a long time, and perfectly captures everything I loved about Ditzy Do. Beautiful hardly seems like enough to describe her personality here, but there's little else I can think of that seems worthy. She's cross-eyed and clumsy, but not distractingly so, and there is still a normal, intelligent mare underneath. But ponies still kind of have this stigma concerning her, as shown by Blossomforth's initial reaction to her when Cloudkicker starts making passes at Ditzy, fearing she won't understand what Cloud's implying. Despite this perception though, Ditzy is still incredibly kind-hearted and understanding, being painfully optimistic and forgiving to almost every pony she encounters. She ends up taking Cloudkicker up on her offer and treats her well, acting almost unfairly towards herself in the process, letting Cloudkicker keep up her polygamous inclinations despite being in an otherwise committed relationship with her. She even goes so far as to dismiss Cloud's confessed fears of commitment when their relationship starts to get even more intimate. Speaking of commitments, Ditzy here not only is a single mother of Dinky, as per the norm, but also adopted an older mare named Sparkler and raises them both, despite it being implied that most of Ponyville thinks it was an irresponsible move for her to take on such an additional burden given her situation as an already single mom. Despite that, Ditzy is a fantastic mother, giving it her all for the sake of her children, and it's just as much the familial bond between Dinky, Sparkler, and Ditzy that shows how amazing she is as a character as it is Ditzy's actions alone. Dinky and Sparkler are just as amazing ponies as their mother, and they make it clear that they owe everything to Ditzy's upbringing, subsequently making their own characters a further reflection of Ditzy's greatness. It's just... I'm rambling now. Ditzy-Doo, especially in Life and Times, is just so perfect it's hard for me to put into words. You really just have to read the fiction in order to understand. And she is probably the closest I've ever come to developing a crush on a fictional character. She's just so beautiful. And there you have it, my top 5 favorite ponies besides the obvious. Like this video? Let me know! I've always enjoyed watching other people's top lists, so if you liked mine, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to doing more. Thanks for sticking around. If you like what you saw, feel free to give that thumbs up button some love, and if this is your first time here, I release new videos every week about cartoons, MLP, and technology. So if you're interested in any or all of those things, I'd love to have you subscribe. Also, I'm all over the internet besides YouTube, so feel free to follow me there as well. Links are in the description below. Until next time, I'm Tommy Oliver, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.